Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our moderator for technology, talent, and tomorrow's workforce, SEI's Allison Carey.
Good morning, everybody. That was quite an introduction. I feel really pumped up now. I am really excited that SEI is sponsoring the Talent, Technology, and the Future of Workforce panel. At SEI, we're on a mission to build brave futures through the power of connection, and I couldn't think of a better topic than the future of our workforce and how we embrace and employ these emerging technologies like AI. So without further ado, we're going to open up with a few comments from Dom Davenport with Babson College, and then we'll dive into our panel. Thank you.
I'm Peter Coffey with Salesforce, and I'm joined by Tom Davenport, distinguished professor at Babson College and frequent and diverse contributor to many different channels of thought on talent, strategy, and AI. And Tom, if I may kick things right off, I was startled to realize that your book, All In on AI, which you co-authored with Nitin Mittal at Deloitte, was January 2023. If you'd gotten it out in January 2024, I think we would have considered it, pretty timely. But you got there when people were still figuring out what the term generative AI even meant. And interestingly, your chapter 2, as soon as you got out of chapter 1, where you talked about, well, this is what AI is, you led with a statement on the human component. The chapter was, I think, called The Human Side. And you led off with a statement about, I want to make sure I get the vigor of the wording, the most important attribute in AI success is not machinery, but human leadership, behavior, and change. And that is so interesting because so many people say, oh, the most important thing in AI is the data, or the most important thing in AI is any one of the various, scalability or organizational issues. You led with leadership and behavior change. And that is so on point for us now. Are people grasping that yet, or are they still thinking of AI as cost reduction and people elimination instead of value creation and people empowerment?
I think that, I always say, if you're not paranoid about what AI will do to the labor force, you're not paying attention. But overall, I've been writing about the impact of AI on the labor force since I think my first book on it was 2016, and I haven't seen much happen yet in that regard. There hasn't been a large loss of employment in any sector yet. I do think that there are some organizations that are trying to reduce headcount with generative AI in particular, but I don't think much of that has happened yet. Witness our low unemployment rate, and countries around the world are more likely to have shortages of labor than they are to have lots of people, wandering the streets looking for jobs. So I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll realize that augmentation is a both more likely and I think a wiser approach to dealing with AI than large-scale automation.
Tom, one of the expressions I use with our account teams at Salesforce when talking with customers is you have to get them to think about AI planning with a calendar, not with an hourglass, that these changes of data orchestration, breaking down siloed behavior in the organization, these are things that take weeks and months, even at the time scale of AI. And one of the key questions is, what are the mistakes I should make sure I'm not making right now that will maximize my opportunity to take advantage of what's still a very rapidly developing technology and expectation set? Are there mistakes that you think people need to be cautioned against even more than there are opportunities that they need to be encouraged to grasp?
Well, I think you're right about that time scale, and what that leads a lot of organizations to do is to just experiment. And experimentation is fine, but just experimenting is not fine. You need to have a sort of a pipeline toward production deployment. We don't get any economic value out of just experimenting. And my recent research suggests that only about 6% of organizations have any production deployment of generative AI. That's not enough, and we need to start ushering these things through the activities you need to do to make them production deployments, like retraining people, like getting your data ready. I mean, generative AI typically uses a different class of data than most organizations have been working with. It's
Yep.
not your, customer transactions in Salesforce. It's what you know as an organization and what your customers are saying to you and so on, that relatively unstructured data. And it's some organizations are ready for that, but most even admit that they are not quite ready for the data transformation.
And you use a really important word there, which is experiment, because experimentation is a discipline. You have a hypothesis you're testing, you have data you collect, you have criteria for success and failure. Is that a discipline that needs to be further developed and nurtured in organizations? Say, we're going to be doing experiments here, but that means we know what hypothesis we're testing and we know what the definition of success is, and we will prune the things that aren't working and move vigorously in the areas that have value.
Very well stated, Peter. In fact, on my computer, I have a draft of an article about the need for discipline with generative AI, and a key aspect of that is disciplined experimentation. We've seen a few academic disciplined experiments with regard to generative AI with a control group, with measures, and so on. But most organizations don't generally do that kind of experimentation or measurement, for that matter. So I think that it's really important to exercise that muscle and figure out, is this something that we want to get all of our marketers to use? Is this something that we intend to make the primary vehicle for understanding the voice of the customer? The only way we're going to know if it's worth the investment is if we have a disciplined experiment.
Well, that's a fantastic tee-off for the rest of the material that you and I have the opportunity to be prefaced to at Forum this year. Thanks for being part of Forum.
Thank you to Tom and Peter for that great conversation to kick us off into a really important topic that really sets the stage for what we're going to discuss the rest of the day. Before we jump in, I do want to have each of the panelists introduce themselves. Let's start with Daniel.
Let's see if I can get this technology to work. So I'm Daniel Rock. I'm an assistant professor in the Operations, Information, and Decisions Department at the Wharton School. Primarily, my research is about the economics of AI, in particular with a focus on how AI might change the workforce. I'm also the CTO of a workforce AI startup called WorkHelix, where we try to help companies implement some of the things we find in research to generate business value.
Susan?
Hi, I'm Susan George. I'm the head of strategic solutioning of workforce innovation with KPMG. That's a new capability we've just developed within our HR organization. And it's actually focused on how we can solution our talent needs within the firm using a disciplined approach to experimentation and bringing innovative concepts, enabling that experimentation through the use of generative AI, but all with a human-centric design.
Michael?
Good morning. My name is Michael Axelrod. I am a co-founder and managing partner of Nimbl Consulting. We're a local technology consulting firm that focuses on helping companies digitally transform their businesses, predominantly in the regulated industries, financial services, healthcare, pharma, with a real push towards research, design, development, and strategy.
Great, thank you. Thank you for joining us this morning. So we'd be remiss not to discuss really COVID and what 2020 really launched all of us into a new type of working model, right? We all went virtual, and the different technologies that came to be to help support us in that model and being productive and keeping business going. Really, the first 2 decades of the 21st century, we were holding on to that traditional working model. So Susan, let's start with you and how KPMG has approached the transition to a hybrid, or maybe bringing some of the old back, right? And what you've found in your journey and what you've learned through that process.
Sure. So what we've found is it's all about purpose, so much so that our hybrid working model is actually called Flex with Purpose. And through experimentation, we've learned it takes an investment of time and great intentionality to make in-person, hybrid, virtual work. If we just mandate people to come back into the office and expect them to work the way they did pre-pandemic, it doesn't work. So we are in a model where we generally expect our people to be in person, whether it's at a client site or in the office, 3 days a week. And we've been on a journey with this. Right as we were coming out of the pandemic, we were at about 2 to 3 days in person, and we actually enabled our teams to decide for themselves what that looked like. We gave them the flexibility to decide, based on the circumstances of their teams, how they would come together. But what we found is that really led to a lot of uncertainty, a lot of inconsistency in how teams were operating, and people just didn't know what the expectations were of them. So we've now moved to a more structured approach, directive approach with the 3 days together in person. And we've actually guided our leaders and our teams to really be intentional about when they're coming together, that it's about coming together for collaboration, for brainstorming, meeting with clients, building relationships, and learning. The intent is not just to bring people back together in person and then have them spend the majority of their day focused solely on heads down work. It's just not feasible, and it's not what people want these days. The other piece we've found is it doesn't come naturally for everyone to understand how to lead in this new environment. And so we need to teach our leaders and our team members how to show up and what it means to work in a hybrid environment, and give them the skills to understand what that means. And again, giving them examples of what can you be doing together in person and what can be done remotely, so that they have something to go to rather than each person having to figure it out on their own.
And what have you seen as far as talent development since the COVID-19 pandemic, and how are you guys tackling that moving forward?
Sure. What we found, so in our industry with professional services, there's generally been kind of a known development track, if you will, with most of our professionals coming in straight out of college. What we found over COVID is that the pace at which our professionals were developing really slowed down, particularly for those professionals who came to us during the pandemic. And it was because they were working remotely, they didn't sit with team members who could answer questions easily, they were spinning wheels trying to figure out answers on their own, and they weren't learning through kind of the osmosis of being around others, hearing conversations that were going on. So the teams that were able to tackle that were the ones who set up time intentionally to answer questions, but that wasn't, again, something that people thought of. It wasn't a first reaction. So that's why when we focus on bringing people back together, it's really focused on, okay, how can we help you develop? How can we help you learn not just the technical skills, but also the enabling skills of communication, adaptability, building relationships?
Daniel, one thing that that gets a lot of attention with this hybrid working model is productivity and how to measure that productivity. What have you seen organizations do, or what do you think they should be doing to better facilitate that hybrid model with productivity oversight?
Sure. Well, let me start by saying, as an economist, the word productivity may mean something a little bit different to me than it does to most folks. I think a lot of the time we hear productivity as a bad word in some sense, that it's cutting costs and firing people. When I hear productivity, it's about how much we get out of what we put in. So productivity is a very good thing in that sense. So when we think about remote work and productivity, or these hybrid working models, I think the academic research is, still saying the jury's out on what remote work does to productivity in general, though hybrid seems to have some advantages over some other approaches, and I think it's very much, for reasons it sounds like y'all are figuring out exactly how to do this well. You worry about productivity at the individual level, how much can one person get done? You worry about it at a team level, where the weakest link in a team can drag down the productivity of the whole group. And then organizationally, how do you coordinate lots of different teams? So setting clear standards about how the working environment should be structured, setting clear expectations, and then not leaning too hard on, say, that intangible know-how or culture stuff that was developed pre-pandemic to go forward today. You need to really be investing in that on a regular basis. So I feel like the whole world, in some sense, is conspiring against junior employees right now. They're not getting the chance to learn from their senior colleagues how to kind of do that really interesting, high-powered work that they might do later in their career, and at the same time, large language models and other their technologies are kind of wiping out those tasks that are a little bit more boring, a little more rote, that kind of offer a value prop to their employer as something that they do while they learn those higher skilled things. So I think being very deliberate about developing junior people and taking that on as something that you make an investment in the future, because those folks are going to be really important to the organization going forward.
And Michael, at Nimbl, how are you guys, guiding organizations to really embrace this hybrid model and bring in junior people? What strategies are you bringing to the table?
It's a great question, Allie. Thank you. The last 5 years, there has been a huge disruption in the workplace. Something that I haven't seen in my lifetime, and I have a couple of years on me. But I think that if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, that's when things started to really change. And I think we've seen that over the last 5 years, between COVID, between fully remote, a hybrid approach, the Great Resignation of a couple of years ago. I think a couple of years back, companies started to lose their cultural identities because people weren't in the office anymore. And it really affected, although they were being productive working remotely, you didn't have that same team environment, that camaraderie that you're used to. And, it was the employer-employee relationship became very transactional. A lot of the newer employees that companies were bringing in were, in essence, hired guns. It was wonderful working remote because it opened up the entire U.S. as a workforce. If you were a company in Philadelphia and you were able to work remote, you can hire somebody in Chicago, in Dallas, in Los Angeles. It didn't matter. But when you do that, you lose that touch. You lose that personal touch where they can be in the office all the time, that collaborative environment. And Zoom calls and Teams calls don't get that same feeling. And we found a couple of times over the years, these remote workers were working 2 full-time jobs, 3 full-time jobs. You don't see that when they're working in the office. I truly believe that when you're in the office, and this is why the hybrid model is so effective, you get those 5-minute drop-bys at people's desks where you can answer something very quickly, as opposed to setting up a half-an-hour Teams call or Zoom call where you're busy doing 8 other things, nobody's paying attention. It's extremely inefficient. Prior to COVID, working remote was generally a privilege that a company would provide to their employees after a hard Monday through Thursday work week. They would provide a Friday to work from home. And if you told somebody 5 years ago you have that opportunity, people would line up to work for those companies. It's not like that anymore. Now people are looking at working remote as a right rather than a privilege, and they're holding out for opportunities to work for companies that provide that fully remote opportunity. What we're seeing, and as we talk to our clients on a daily basis, the move to a hybrid model, because I'm not so sure it's ever going to get back to 5 days a week in the office, but the hybrid model, it provides that respect to your employees, that you're telling them, we know when you're home, you're going to be doing your job. When you're in the office, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to get back to that company culture. We're going to get back to that collaboration and get work done in the office. And all of our clients now that are moving to that hybrid model, I think they're seeing different productivity. It's not that they weren't productive when they were working remote, but it's a different feel of the work that they're doing when they're in the office.
So obviously the working models and the change to hybrid and the impact that's had on junior workforce, now we have the emergence of artificial intelligence, new tools that are further disrupting the way we work. So to all of you interested in how is your organization embracing or not artificial intelligence, and what is the guidance you're giving to your people? We'll start at the end, Daniel.
I'll speak for 2 separate organizations. I think Wharton has been sort of leading the charge in some sense amongst many business schools for adopting AI and trying to understand what its impacts on the economy and organizations will be. I think I've seen many professors have instituted AI policies for their courses, and many of them are also interested in adopting it into their research. Certainly I have. I tell my students, for example, on written assignments, you no longer get an A if you're correct. You get an A if you're correct and you're original, and I define original as different than ChatGPT's response. I can show them that I can calculate this too, in case they don't believe me. And then on the Work Helix side, what we're building incorporates AI into pretty much every step. So we use ordinary supervised machine learning or unsupervised machine learning techniques, but then we also use AI, I think, as Peter was saying, to extend our abilities to do things that would have been cost prohibitive even 3 or 4 years ago. We're deploying language models pretty much everywhere. And I want to stress that the language model component, what it lets you do is not just about printing out text or code or images. That's the decoder side. It's very valuable. But a lot of the value comes from the encoder side. How can you take unstructured data and represent that numerically? Then we can operate on it. We can do interesting things with that data. Compare which types of inputs are similar, which ones are different. It's a totally new type of software, and that enables all sorts of new products and ways to drive customer value.
Susan, what about a KPMG?
So we've been innovating with our clients in AI for over a decade, but in the past year, we've put a huge investment into it, creating an AI transformation office that's led by our Vice Chair of AI and Digital Innovation, Steve Chase. We are looking at the services that we deliver to our clients as well as how we enable our people better. So looking to embed AI into the technologies that our audit, tax, and advisory professionals use so that they're more efficient in enhancing the insights that they're bringing to our clients, as well as our internal employees. Really, we've released enterprise GPT versions to all of our employees. We're in the midst of a phased rollout of Copilot, and basically bringing along our entire population to help them understand how AI can be used and how it can impact their everyday work.
Michael?
So we're trying to help lower digital friction, improve efficiencies, and help remove the mundane tasks that our people are doing on a daily basis, right? Try to save them some time and effort and save our resources time. For example, from a recruiting standpoint, we're using AI to refine resumes, improve job descriptions, allow our recruiters to have an easier time in finding the right resource. And then when it comes to meetings with our clients, if our architects or program managers are in a meeting with clients, we'll tape those meetings. Rather than take notes in the meeting, we're going to tape the meeting, we'll come back, download the audio, and then allow ChatGPT or another avenue to summarize the meeting that we had. It allows us to pay a lot more attention in the meetings to focus on exactly what we're talking about rather than taking notes all the time. And it's really become much more efficient, and it takes away those mundane tasks from our employees.
What's encouraging is all of the organizations are really encouraging their employees to use the tools, access the tools. It sounds like there's also ways in which the data's been focused in on your organization to provide, the most uplift to those employees. One thing I'm interested in, though, in connecting to Peter and Mike Bachman's conversation earlier, is really embracing that human quality that we all have, right? So Daniel, there's a lot of talk that AI is going to replace people. Want to get your insight here. First, do you agree? And if so, why? If not, why?
Right. So there are certainly places where AI, or at least the recent set of models in AI, will create some disruption. I'm not disputing that. But in my research with colleagues at OpenAI and GovAI, we found, 80% of roles have 10% of their tasks roughly exposed. Exposed not being good or bad, but think of this as a job is a bundle of tasks, and 10% of the tasks for 80% of workers might change as a result of these technologies, which, to be candid, is enormous. That is a lot of change that's going to happen in the economy. There's one task in the economy, which is coordinating and managing sales activity. It might be a $250 billion a year opportunity. for AI to help out, and that's benefits going to firms and workers. But no, I don't think AI is going to take away all of our jobs. So if you see our paper cited saying OpenAI says all the jobs are going away, that's absolutely not what we found. We found that there's a lot of change that's going to happen, and that rhymes with earlier technologies. We've seen that kind of disruption happen in the past, and it's just a matter of managing who might be some of the losers from this. And I think in that sense, good AI policy for the workforce is just good policy for the workforce in general.
Susan, one thing that's super interesting based on that comment is really what this is going to require is organizations and people really taking inventory of the skills that they have and they bring to work every day, or organizations taking inventory of the skills they need and how to source those skills. Can you talk a little bit about what KPMG is doing around assessing skill gaps and upskilling the workforce?
Sure. So that's a journey we've started. So our traditional way of looking at our people and determining skills was based on roles and the tasks within the roles and whether people have the education for that. And what we're in the process of finding is, okay, we've done the work with identifying tasks, but we can't deconstruct and figure things out based on the current state. We now have to kind of pause the work we've been doing and do an analysis of what's the impact of AI, which tasks are going to be augmented versus which are going to be automated, and then what are then the new skills that are needed. We're looking to find the right system to help us with tracking skills, and there's challenges. There's thousands of skills that can be pre-populated in these systems. We're asking our professionals to go in and indicate what skills they have, and so how do you validate the skills and their proficiencies that they're listing? How do we make sure we've got a common language around skills that we're using across the firm? So we're on a journey of trying to find that in the right way, as well as adjust the way that we're upskilling our people as we go along that journey.
So as we look, I find it so interesting, especially my experience as a junior person in an organization that really spent a lot of time giving me and my peers access to senior people, and what has happened over the last 5 years. What are universities doing today to prepare their students to come into a workforce that is quite different than it was 5-10 years ago, and it's consistently being disrupted almost daily at this point? Daniel, if you want to take that one.
So I've seen, for the most part, many universities at the university level dropping the ball in a big way. You see a lot of faculty trying to fight this, trying to say using GPT is cheating. These sorts of efforts are designed to fail, and they're designed to fail our students. If you don't teach students to work with GPT, say a calculator for language, then you're putting them at a disadvantage for the work that they might be doing, not only by preventing them from competing with those who use GPT, but by selecting them for the kind of work that doesn't deploy it well. So universities that haven't shifted towards this notion that the cat is out of the bag and it's time to train people to use this stuff are really missing an opportunity. That said, I've seen many great efforts to deploy this stuff, fast development of curriculum. It's a pretty competitive environment out there for this training, especially at the university level, and the students are keenly aware of the risks that they're facing. So they're super hungry for that content that will enable them to be competitive. Many of them are nimble. They're looking to develop those skill sets and to continue learning in their careers. So that's the biggest message that I have for my students. Be prepared to dodge and weave. You're going to have to learn for the rest of your life.
Michael, what about at Nimbl?
Nice inadvertent shout out for us, Daniel. Thanks.
As you're recruiting talent, right, from universities or 5 years or less experience, what are you seeing?
I think the key is, I was reading an article a couple days ago, 33% of the current workforce is going to be looking for a job in the next year. That's a big number. And the reasons they're looking for a new job is they're underpaid, they're undervalued in their mind, and they don't have a clear career path. I think that's the key. As we talk to our younger consultants and our younger employees, everybody is interested in a career path. How am I going to gain more skills? How am I going to learn? How am I going to be paired with a more senior resource to learn this? Gone are the days of the 20-year employee where they get a watch when they're there for 25 years. I want to get back there, and I think we can get back there. We haven't seen that for the last couple of years. But what we're trying to do with our younger talent is giving them, whether it's with us or with our clients, giving them that career path, providing them with the proper training that they need, keep them up to date on the newest technologies, let them feel that they're part of something and they're learning and they're growing with an organization. If they don't feel that way, that's a good reason for them to look for something else.
Susan, you guys, or KPMG has deep connections with universities, especially as a recruiting base. What are you seeing as the students are coming through your partnerships and your programs?
So we have been finding that the universities have been a little bit behind in terms of training the students on the disruptive technologies and stuff. And so we've actually decided to go to the universities and help them. So we've partnered with 16 different universities where we're actually helping them curate curriculum for a master's in data and analytics that they're providing, and we've provided scholarships for the students in that program. In addition to that, we're offering a website with content for faculty that they can access for free that's on all kinds of current topics, including the introduction to generative AI, and we host quarterly faculty webinars trying to, since the curriculum's not being developed fast enough, we're taking what we know, our technologies, the things we're learning, and going to the universities to help them prepare the students so that they're ready when they get to us.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good match. We have about a little less than 5 minutes, and I do want to give each of you the opportunity to tell us what your crystal ball has in it. If we're looking at the future of work, and what are those attractive skill sets for the future of work? What makes you excited? What makes you nervous? Michael, if you want to start.
So what makes me excited is the opportunity that AI is bringing. Are some jobs going to go away? Sure. However, it also breeds tremendous opportunity. There's going to be tons of change management opportunities, governance opportunities, regulatory opportunities, and also prompt engineer opportunities, teaching the younger generation how to put in the proper search strings when it comes to ChatGPT, because we all know garbage in, garbage out. If you're not putting in the right search string, you're not going to get the right stuff out. I'm excited about more and more companies moving to the hybrid model, getting back in the office. I think that's very exciting. My concern over the next few years is really for the younger generation. If they're not ingrained in a company, if they don't feel like they're part of something bigger, they're going to keep jumping from job to job to job, never get the requisite experience and talent that they need to really advance their careers.
Susan?
So if I had to say about what I'm excited about as an HR professional, I'm excited about the opportunities the new technology gives us to really think about the way we design a workday and be able to address the burnout that we keep hearing about and the increasing pressure on well-being and stress. And so being able to use this technology to automate out the mundane tasks and provide tasks that are more meaningful in nature and provide more purpose while balancing, making sure that we're not blurring the line between work hours and personal time because of that greater connectivity, but the opportunity to really address that need, as well as level the playing field in a way. AI gives access to knowledge and skills that people who didn't have access to advanced degrees before can now tap into, whether it's those junior skills of just learning how to write an email or create a presentation to analyzing data. More people now have access to something that before they didn't have access to. What makes me nervous is whether we'll be able to keep up with the pace of change. Are we going to be able to identify those new skills that are needed? Are we going to be able to upskill the professionals we have? We're not going to be able to, it's not cost effective to go get whole new professionals, so we need to be able to upskill our professionals and help them see the value of it and get them on board with the upskilling as well, right? It has to be a mutual effort.
Daniel?
If I'm most excited about anything, it popped out of a result that we got in our paper when we were looking at which types of roles have exposure, and that's scientists, technologists, and researchers are turbocharged by this technology, which means if you stick that in a model of economic growth, things go up and to the right very quickly. The sorts of things that you can do with these technologies, things that would never have been possible before, things like discovering an entirely new class of antibiotics, or figuring out a way to control tokamak, fusion plasmas, things that people wouldn't do, but machines can now. I am super, super excited for that. So I expect not necessarily that we get explosive economic growth from this. It will take a long time, and I think there's kind of a natural built-in slowdown just in how long it takes organizations to react. But the sorts of things that are possible with this, the kinds of benefits we can get by turbocharging science are very, very exciting. And on the flip side of that coin, I'm a little bit concerned there's a long history in technology of increasing the ability of individuals to reach impact at scale. There are some people out there where if they had scaled impact, it wouldn't be good for the rest of us. So I'm a little bit concerned about how that might play out, but we can keep an eye on how these technologies get deployed. That's very high level, I know, but I'm very excited about the science.
No, a great way to end the panel here. One thing I'm taking away is really this technology is giving us an opportunity to turbocharge, to use your words, Daniel, our superpower as humans, our creativity, our ability to come together, connect, and solve really hard problems. Now we can do it faster, bigger, stronger. And I do think our panel at the end of the day around the ethics of AI will hit exactly your point, Daniel. That's good, and that could be bad. Thank you all. I think we have time for questions. This is what the TV screen's telling me up here. So I will try and see if there are any questions. Oh, that's helpful. Okay. So all of us, I believe, will be here for the rest of the day. Happy to chat and looking forward to the rest of it. Thank you so much, Daniel, Susan, and Michael.